Students at a Colorado high school were criticized after they put a photo of Donald Trump on a piñata and then proceeded to hit the piñata, which you're supposed to do. Now, there was a Spanish teacher involved who apparently allowed them to do it. He is now on administrative leave as administrators look into the incident and decide whether or not there was any wrongdoing. However, update to the story is that this particular school, Roosevelt High School in Johnstown, Colorado, had to cancel classes because of threats that they received after this whole story broke, okay? So look, these kids do the piñata thing, they're kids, and maybe they shouldn't have done it, whatever. But there's an interesting conversation taking place in the country about freedom of speech.
I thought you were gonna say piñatas.
No. But
the country's a buzz about piñatas.
Although piñatas are always fun, but think about it for a second, okay? These kids do what they do, and everyone's up in arms to the point where someone online threatens them, and apparently the threat is credible enough that they have to cancel classes for a full day, right? What happened to conservatives not being snowflakes? You're that offended by a piñata that has Trump's face on it? Like, think about that for a second. And what happened to free speech? You could argue that this is a form of political speech on a publicly funded campus, right?
Yes, free speech for me, not so much for you.
Right. Where's Ann Coulter? I'm sure she's outraged about this.
Yeah, I mean, I hope you guys aren't offended, right? Okay, now on to the essence of the story. Look, I don't think that the question is that simple as to if the teacher actually is the one that led it and is the one that put the picture on, et cetera. When those are facts we're not really sure of at all at this point, based on the reporting in Colorado. Should they suspend them, et cetera, right? Because you always have to think about shoe on the other foot, right? So if there was a teacher that put Obama's face somewhere and encouraged the kids to hit it, shooting practice, I hope they're not doing that in high school, right? But, or a piñata, et cetera. I'm sure that we'd be pretty pissed about it, and we wouldn't want our kids being taught in a place where they're beating Obama's face on a piñata.
Right, look, and I think context matters, right? So if you're talking about an adult who's encouraging that kind of activity or that behavior, I get it, it's not right, okay? Regardless of who the president is. But also at the same time, I just find it so interesting. Look, if someone had done that with Obama's image or Bernie Sanders' image for that matter, I wouldn't feel compelled to send death threats, right? I wouldn't lose it. Like, I would comment on it and say, that's inappropriate, let's move on with our lives. You see what I'm saying?
First of all, on your point, of course,
yeah.
that's not an interesting debate. Okay, and you're right, the irony of whoever sending the threats is like, you are harming President Trump's picture, so I will hurt all the kids. What, right? I think that your offense might be slightly worse than their offense. Now, but is it an offense? And I wanna ask a poll question about that. Because, look, there's one other wrinkle to it too. Because if you just were firing at a Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama target practice or something like stories we've covered before, that's unacceptable. But that's actually firing bullets. This is a piñata, and to your point about context, Trump went after Mexicans, right? And called them rapists and criminals. So if people put Obama's face on a piñata because he deported more Latinos than any other president in history, which is true, by the way, I don't think I'd be offended, right? It depends on the context. If they say, look, he broke the record on deportations and it wasn't the right thing to do, and we put his face on a piñata, I totally get that, right? So now I'm not sure that I would have done it, but I understand it, right? And I understand that there's a very uncomfortable imagery of an African American where you beat it, et cetera. So that is an extra piece of context.
Right.
So that's why I think it's an interesting issue. Our poll here is tytnetwork.com/piñata. And we wanna see, was it inappropriate for the teacher to use a Trump piñata, okay?
If the teacher was the one who encouraged it, by the way.
Okay, so that's, you can call it a hypothetical, okay?
Right.
So I'm genuinely curious about this and where you guys come out on it. And I'm a little split. For the reasons that I just explained. Do you know how you're voting?
Well, if it's the teacher, I think it's inappropriate. Like, I don't want any teacher to do that. But if the teachers did it on their own, I don't really care that much who the politician is or what their ideology is. I think that it's a form of expression. And yes, I know that the First Amendment is limited when it comes to grade school campuses, even if they're publicly funded. But I think that it's important to allow kids to think critically and to share their political opinion and to encourage them to share their political opinion. I'm not saying encourage them to do violent things, but if they're frustrated about something, I think it's a teachable moment, and I think it's an opportunity to actually open up a discussion. So
yeah,
and also, look, I completely understand that in the past we have done stories where something like this happens or something similar happens and we're outraged, right? But now I've gotten to a point where I'm tired of the outrage. I'm outraged at the people that are constantly outraged. Okay, it's a piñata. There's a bunch of high school students hitting a piñata that has Trump's face on it. I just overall don't care that much.
Okay, man. Interesting enough. Look, I keep thinking he attacked Latinos. It's a piñata. I get it, right? On the other hand, I keep thinking I don't want Bernie on a piñata. So
yeah,
it's a tough one. You decide. tytnetwork.com/piñata.
Podcast the Young Turks anytime you want. tytnetwork.com/join.
I think it's weird.
No, it's not weird. In fact, you'll think,
I'm like a smart person.
Do it now. tytnetwork.com/join.